Welcome back to Beyond the Leading Questions, where we talk all things psychology and law. How are you doing, Mindy?
I'm great, Cynthia. Excited for today's topic. We're going to be discussing child victim witnesses. This is one of the more difficult ways psychology and law intercept because it deals with a lot of unpacking and suggestibility.
We'll dig into this subject and focus on the impact. The reliability of a child's testimony is in a forensic setting. Did you know that this wasn't even a subject that was researched until the 70s and 80s?
Yes, huge high profile cases like Martinsville, which we covered last week, allowed for big changes in courts. They started dropping evidence involving children's testimony to first try to better understand the mind of a child.
So, what exactly is suggestibility?
Well, it encompasses more than one thing. It's really dual natured. It's tied to cognitive, emotional, and social factors that play a major role in testimonial settings.
Right. Can you expand on that? What are the main different types?
Well, there are two main types. First, we have immediate suggestibility, or what we also call interrogative suggestibility. We measure this using two concepts. We have yield, how easily a child accepts a leading question. Then we have shift, how likely they are to change their answer after receiving some sort of negative feedback from the interviewer.
Right, negative feedback like a frown or being asked the same
Mm-hmm.
question
Mm-hmm.
repeatedly can make a child think, oh, I must have gotten it wrong, or I must have done something wrong.
Exactly. Now, we also have delayed suggestibility, which is much darker and insidious than our first one. Here, information is given post event and it gets tied into the original memory days, weeks later. Immediate and delayed suggestibility are linked by something called source monitoring.
Ooh, I know about this. It's the undermining mechanism of all of this. The child starts to question themselves where this memory is coming from. They literally can't tell where it came from, or if they are being true to their own memory or not.
And the heavy pressure to get more information and as much detail as possible allows for the interviewer's own personal biases to influence them without even realizing it. We have discussed a classic case that helps us view this with better context, the Chester the janitor study.
Oh my gosh, yes, the Chester and janitor study. Quick recap: 5 and 6-year-olds witnessed an ambiguous situation involving a janitor, and when interviewed about it, the tone of alone of the interviewer was influential enough to sway their memory of the situation.
Right. I remember how easily I was persuaded by authority like figures when I was in the presence of one as a child. But we'll get into that a little later. Again, this study, if the interviewer sounded accusatory, the kids would go along with whatever was being asked. If they sounded supportive, the kids would also agree with what was said. 75% of the time, the kids agreed with interviewer suggestions.
Wow, I'm also so shocked by these results, but it makes complete sense because it's more than just tone alone. There's other techniques that also come to play.
Like repeating the same question over and over again definitely is another tactic because to the child, they understand it as negative feedback, as if their answer is wrong. Stereotype induction is another huge factor, which is when an interviewer would say something like, he's the bad guy, right? You're flat out trying to persuade and influence details that fit your own narrative.
Right, they're basically creating the story that they want the child to tell them. But a child's emotional internal state plays a big part as well.
Yes, of course, anyone's emotional state would play a factor in something like this. Trauma like PTSD can for sure increase a child's vulnerability for both immediate and delayed suggestibility.
Honestly, it's quite sad. Probably the very reason they are in the situation is what makes their testimony so shaky.
Yes, it's genuinely a crazy paradox that's going on here. We see in the research many children, although they do push back against these narratives, they're highly resistant. No, that's not how it happened, or you weren't there, are examples that researchers call direct explanations, DE answers.
Wow, that's a huge skill, a huge cognitive skill, actually. Even adults lack.
Yes, it's a massive amount of cognitive skill to do something like that. It requires a strong source monitoring. We see this a lot in older children. Again, all of this puts a huge pressure on the interviewing process because it's a little too easy for children to testify.
Oh, really? Want to explain?
Well, like here in Canada, children under 14 can testify as long as they understand and can respond to questions being asked of them. They just have to promise to tell the truth, which is why it's so important for that first initial interview to provide crucial details.
Wait, that's actually wild. Like, let's get into the protections.
hmm
What are the best ways we provide that?
For sure. Experts have developed protections like NICHD interview protocol. Sorry. It gives us guidelines made to counteract many of these issues we see when it comes to children testifying. It's simple but powerful. The interviewer needs to avoid their own biases and start with open ended prompts, like letting the child lead. The prompt should be something like, "Tell me everything you remember."
That's a lot to take on for just one person if you really think about it.
Mhm.
Essentially, the forensic experts need to not only give an interview, but also evaluate the child's abilities.
Yep, they have to make sure their evaluation is objective and that they are measuring their suggestibility. Doing this, they also need to take in the child's language skills, executive functions, and more importantly, how they are emotionally and mentally. It is a whole set of guidelines that allows them to get a full picture of not just the situation, but again, the child's ability.
Okay, okay. Before we get to the ads, how should we summarize this? Let's dumb it down a little bit.
Okay. Like, think of suggestibility as a characteristic we have as individuals. It's not just an age thing, it doesn't only affect children. As we said before, many children are resilient to leading questions. It's really all about who is more vulnerable and susceptible to misinformation, especially when it's being implanted into core memories.
This is a complex topic that definitely needs careful individual assessment. A history of trauma can significantly make a child more vulnerable to suggestion, either immediate or delayed. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, for sure. The need to seek justice and it being relied on child's testimony can most definitely cause distress in a child. How can our justice system alter this in order to protect children from this kind of suffering? More on that after we hear from our sponsors.